The old overpass on Jefferson Avenue cast long shadows as the sun began to set. Underneath, a tall man with graying hair carefully arranged his few belongings inside a small cardboard shelter. His name was Ray, and this had been his spot for nearly 3 months now, longer than most places he'd stayed in the past 2 years of living on the streets. Ray moved with a certain purpose that stood out from others in similar situations. The way he organized his small living space showed habits formed long ago. Everything had its place, everything served a purpose. His weathered green backpack, faded but still sturdy, sat within arm's reach, never farther. Some folks who passed by might have recognized it as military issue, but most didn't look closely enough to notice. Another day done, Ray muttered to himself, pulling a thin blanket from his pack. The October air was getting sharper each night, and he knew what was coming. Winter in Detroit was no joke, especially for those without walls and a roof. He'd survived 2 winters on these streets already, but each one took something from him that he couldn't quite get back. From his shelter, Ray could see the fancy downtown buildings lit up against the darkening sky. People in nice clothes walked quickly to their cars or waited for rideshares, eager to get home. Home. Such a simple word that meant everything when you didn't have one. A group of young men passed by on the sidewalk above, laughing loudly. Ray instinctively pulled deeper into the shadows. He'd gotten good at becoming invisible when needed. It wasn't always gangs or troublemakers you had to worry about. Sometimes it was just regular folks who decided that seeing homeless people made them uncomfortable. Ray pulled out a small notebook from his inside jacket pocket and a stubby pencil. His large hands, rough and calloused, seemed too big for such a small pencil, but his writing was surprisingly neat. He wrote the date at the top of a fresh page and began to record his day, where he'd found food, who he'd seen, what the weather was doing. Old habits from another life. His stomach growled, reminding him that the half sandwich from the church outreach van had been hours ago. From a side pocket of his backpack, he pulled out 2 slightly squashed granola bars, his emergency rations. He unwrapped one slowly, breaking it into small pieces to make it last longer. As he ate, his mind drifted back, as it often did in these quiet moments. Back to sandy places where the heat pressed down like a physical weight. Back to the sound of helicopters and the weight of his pack and weapon. Back to the faces of men who had trusted him with their lives. "Not tonight," Ray whispered, shaking his head to clear away the memories. The nightmares would come anyway, they always did, but he tried not to invite them in early. A police car rolled slowly down the street, its spotlight sweeping across the underpass. Ray remained perfectly still, knowing from experience that movement caught attention. The light passed over him without stopping, and he let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. From further down the underpass, he heard a shuffling sound. An older man named Bill made his way toward his own cardboard home about 30 feet from Ray's. They nodded to each other but didn't speak. They had an unspoken agreement, keep an eye out, but respect each other's space. Bill had been on the streets even longer than Ray. As the night grew darker and colder, Ray pulled his blanket tighter. Traffic thinned out overhead, and the city began to quiet, though it never truly went silent. He leaned back against the concrete wall and closed his eyes, not to sleep, not yet, but to rest. His body might have been still, but his mind kept working, always alert, always listening. Tomorrow he would need to find water to wash up, maybe check the community center for a shower if the line wasn't too long. His beard was getting too thick, making him more noticeable. In Ray's world, being noticed was rarely a good thing. He patted the small knife hidden in his boot, not for trouble, just for safety. Then he touched the folded photograph in his shirt pocket, right next to his heart. Some things you held onto, no matter what. The distant sound of sirens wailed somewhere in the city, rising and falling like a sad song. Ray took a deep breath and prepared himself for another long night, where sleep came in short, troubled bursts. Tomorrow was another day of surviving. That's what he did now, he survived. But there had been a time, long ago, when he had done so much more than just survive. Ray had just finished his daily walk around the neighborhood when he noticed something different. 3 young men were hanging around near his spot under the overpass. They weren't the usual folks he saw, not other homeless people or the church volunteers who sometimes brought food. These guys had a different look about them. They stood with a kind of confidence that made the hair on the back of Ray's neck stand up. Ray slowed his steps. Years of living on the streets had taught him to trust his gut, and right now, his gut was telling him to be careful. He considered walking past, finding somewhere else to spend the night, but the thought of leaving his few belongings behind wasn't an option. Everything he owned was tucked away in that hidden corner. One of the young men spotted Ray and nudged the others. The tallest one, wearing a red jacket with some kind of symbol on the back, straightened up and stepped forward. He had a thin face with sharp eyes and a small tattoo beneath his left eye that looked like a teardrop. "Hey, old-timer," Red Jacket called out. "We've been waiting on you." Ray kept his face blank, showing nothing. He'd learned that trick long before becoming homeless. Show no fear, show no anger, show nothing at all. "Can I help you?" Ray asked quietly, stopping a good distance away from them. The three young men spread out slightly, and Ray noticed how they moved, like they were surrounding prey. The one in the red jacket seemed to be in charge. "Yeah, you can help us," Red Jacket said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "See, things are changing around here. This area? It belongs to the downtown boys now. And we're collecting rent." The shortest of the three laughed. "Yeah, rent. Everyone pays, even bums." Ray took a slow breath. He'd heard about this happening in other areas. Young gangs marking territory, demanding money from anyone they could, even those with almost nothing to give. "I don't have any money," Ray said simply. Red Jacket stepped closer. "Then maybe you shouldn't be sleeping here. This spot costs $5 a night now, or whatever else you got that's worth something." Ray's eyes flicked to his cardboard shelter. His backpack was hidden inside, containing everything important to him: his notebook, the old photo, his medicine from the VA clinic, and the small wooden box his wife had given him before his last deployment. "I've been here almost 3 months," Ray said. "Never bothered anyone." "Don't matter," said the third guy, who had been quiet until now. He had a scar running along his jawline. "New rules. Boss says everyone pays, everyone pays." Red Jacket moved forward and kicked at Ray's cardboard shelter, knocking one side down. "Maybe you didn't hear right. This ain't a free spot no more." Something flashed in Ray's eyes, a brief glimpse of something hard and dangerous, but it disappeared just as quickly. His hands stayed relaxed at his sides, though they twitched slightly. "I heard you," Ray said. "I just don't have anything to give." The three exchanged looks, and Red Jacket shrugged. "Then I guess you better find somewhere else to sleep tonight. And leave whatever you got behind. Consider it your first payment." An older homeless man who sometimes shared the underpass with Ray watched from a distance, fear clear on his face. He caught Ray's eye for a moment, then quickly looked away. "I'll see what I can find," Ray said carefully. "Maybe tomorrow I can get something." Red Jacket laughed. "Sure, old man. Tomorrow. We'll be back to check." He leaned in closer. "And just so you know, we don't like people who don't pay. Bad things happen to them. Ask around." The three backed away, still facing Ray, still watching him with those predator eyes. "Downtown boys run this block now," Red Jacket called out as they finally turned to leave. "Remember that." After they disappeared around the corner, Ray slowly approached his damaged shelter. He knelt down and carefully fixed the cardboard walls, his movements precise and controlled. But anyone looking closely would have noticed that his hands were shaking slightly. The older homeless man shuffled closer. "Those boys are bad news," he whispered. "They beat up Jim last week when he couldn't pay. Took his shopping cart with all his cans." Ray nodded but said nothing. He pulled his backpack from its hiding place and checked that everything was still there. "Maybe we should move on," the older man suggested. "Find another spot." Ray looked up at the darkening sky. A cold wind was picking up, carrying the promise of rain. Moving meant finding a new shelter, a new safe place, starting over. And there was no guarantee the gang wouldn't find them there too. "We'll see," Ray said quietly, though his mind was already working, calculating, planning, skills from another lifetime coming back to him. "We'll see what tomorrow brings." 3 weeks had passed since the downtown boys first showed up, and life had gotten harder for Ray. He tried changing spots twice, moving his few belongings to different corners of the neighborhood. But somehow they always found him. Sometimes they just took what little money he had managed to collect from returning bottles and cans. Other times, they kicked over his shelter or dumped out his backpack, laughing as they scattered his carefully organized possessions across the dirty ground. Each time, Ray would silently pick everything up after they left, his face giving away nothing of the storm brewing inside him. The cold November wind cut through Ray's thin jacket as he huddled against the wall of an abandoned building. Winter was coming fast now. Last night had brought the first frost, coating the ground with a thin layer of white that crunched under his worn boots. Just need to make it through one more winter, Ray whispered to himself, though he'd said the same thing last year. As he turned the corner toward the small park where he sometimes spent afternoons, Ray spotted an elderly woman struggling with a shopping cart full of belongings. He recognized her, Ms. Rose, everyone called her. She had to be at least 70, with thin white hair poking out from under a knitted hat. She had been on the streets for as long as anyone could remember, but she always kept herself clean and had a kind word for others. Right now, though, Ms. Rose looked scared. The wheel of her cart had gotten stuck in a crack in the sidewalk, and she was pulling at it with shaking hands. Ray was about to offer help when he spotted why she was so anxious to move along. The downtown boys were heading her way from the other end of the block. Without thinking, Ray quickened his pace and reached Ms. Rose just as her cart tipped over, spilling her carefully packed bags onto the sidewalk. "Let me help you with that," Ray said quietly, already kneeling to gather her things. "Oh, thank you, dear," Ms. Rose said, her voice shaking slightly. "I need to get moving. Those young men—" "I know," Ray nodded. "Just stay calm. We'll get your things." But they were too late. The gang members had already spotted them and were now surrounding them. Red Jacket stood at the front, a smirk on his face. Today he had 5 others with him, more than Ray had seen before. "Well, look who it is," Red Jacket said. "The old man who doesn't want to pay his dues. And now he's helping Granny here, who also owes us." Ms. Rose's hands trembled as she clutched a plastic bag to her chest. "Please, I don't have anything. Just my medicines and some food." "Not our problem," one of the other boys said, reaching for her bag. Ray straightened up slowly. For weeks, he had kept his head down. For weeks, he had just taken what they dished out. Something about seeing them target this elderly woman changed something inside him. A line had been crossed. "Leave her alone," Ray said, his voice different now, deeper, more commanding. "She's not bothering anyone." The gang members looked at each other, surprised at the change in the usually quiet homeless man. Red Jacket laughed, stepping closer. "Look who found his voice." "What, you have protector now? You can barely protect yourself, old-timer." "I'm asking nicely," Ray said, his eyes now focused and clear. "Walk away." "Or what?" Red Jacket pulled out a small knife from his pocket, flicking it open with practiced ease. "You gonna stop us? You, an old bum with nothing?" What happened next happened so fast that later, when the other gang members tried to explain it to their friends, they couldn't quite get the sequence right. Ray moved with a speed that seemed impossible for a man his age. His hand shot out, gripping Red Jacket's wrist with such force that the knife clattered to the ground. In one smooth motion, Ray twisted the young man's arm behind his back and pushed him face first against the wall. The other gang members stood frozen, mouths open in shock. They had never seen anyone move like that, especially not a homeless man they'd been harassing for weeks. Red Jacket's eyes were wide with fear and confusion. This was not the same man they'd been pushing around. "Listen carefully," Ray said in a low voice that only Red Jacket could hear. "There are lines you don't cross. Threatening an elderly woman is one of them. I've let you take my money. I've let you kick my shelter. But this stops now. Let him go," one of the other gang members shouted, but none of them moved any closer. Ray's eyes scanned them all, taking in their positions, their stances. The calculation in his gaze was something none of them had seen in the eyes of a homeless person before. "Here's how this is going to work," Ray said calmly. "Ms. Rose is off limits. I'm off limits. Find someone else to bother." He released Red Jacket with a small push, stepping back but remaining alert, his body balanced and ready. The gang leader stumbled forward, rubbing his wrist, his face a mixture of anger and something new, respect, or maybe fear. "You're dead, old man," Red Jacket spat out, but his usual confidence was shaken. "You don't know who you're messing with." Ray picked up Ms. Rose's fallen cart and righted it, never taking his eyes off the group. "I think I do," he said quietly. "The question is, do you know who you've been messing with?" The story of what happened between Ray and the downtown boys spread through the streets like wildfire. People who lived under bridges and in alleyways whispered about the homeless man who had stood up to the gang. Some said he had broken the leader's arm. Others claimed he had taken on all 6 of them at once. The truth got stretched with each telling, but one thing remained clear: something unusual had happened that day. Ray himself had moved to a new spot, helping Ms. Rose relocate her cart to a safer area near the church that ran the soup kitchen. He kept his head down and tried to avoid attention, but he could feel eyes on him now, some admiring, some curious, some afraid. 2 days after the confrontation, a middle-aged man in a navy blue jacket walked slowly through the areas where homeless people gathered. He wasn't from the police or the city services. Those officials had a certain look about them, a certain way of holding clipboards and avoiding eye contact. This man was different. He stopped and talked to people, listened to them, shook their hands. "I'm looking for someone," he told a group sharing a small fire in a metal drum. Tall guy, probably in his 40s, gray in his beard. Might have had some trouble with the downtown boys recently. The homeless people exchanged glances but said nothing. Street code was clear. You didn't give information about others to strangers, no matter how friendly they seemed. The man in the navy jacket sighed. "Look, I'm not here to cause problems. My name is Tom. I work at the Veterans Center on Monroe Street. I think this man might be someone we can help." One older woman warming her hands by the fire spoke up. "Why are you looking for him? He in trouble?" Tom shook his head. "No, ma'am. Just the opposite. The way I heard the story about how he handled those gang kids, well, it sounded familiar. Sounded like someone with training, military training." For 3 days, Tom searched the areas where homeless people gathered. He visited the soup kitchens, the warming centers, the underpasses. On the 4th day, as a light snow began to fall, he spotted a tall figure helping a group of teenagers secure a tarp over their makeshift shelter. Tom watched from a distance, noting how the man checked the corners of the tarp, how he tested the knots, how he positioned the shelter away from the wind. There was a method to his movements, an efficiency that stood out. When the teenagers thanked him and crawled inside their shelter, the man stood guard for a moment, scanning the area before turning to leave. That's when he spotted Tom watching him. Their eyes met across the empty lot. The homeless man's body tensed, ready to move in any direction needed. Tom raised his hands slightly, showing he meant no harm, and slowly walked closer. "You're a hard man to find," Tom said. "Not looking to be found," Ray answered, his voice low. His eyes took in Tom's clothes, his stance, the small pin on his jacket, a military service pin. "My name's Tom. I work with veterans at the Outreach Center." Ray said nothing, but he didn't walk away. "I heard what happened with those gang members," Tom continued. "The way you handled it. The way you moved." He paused. "You at Force Recon, weren't you?" Ray's eyes narrowed slightly. "Who wants to know?" Tom unzipped his jacket and reached slowly into an inside pocket. Ray watched his every move. Tom pulled out a worn leather wallet and flipped it open to show a military ID card. "Someone who recognizes a Marine when he sees one," Tom replied. 20 years myself. Nothing as impressive as Force Recon, though. I was just a regular grunt." For the first time, Ray's face showed a flicker of emotion, recognition, maybe even a hint of connection. "How'd you know?" Ray asked. "The way you handled those boys. The precision. The control." Tom smiled slightly. "You could have hurt them badly, but you didn't. You used just enough force to send a message. Classic training." Ray glanced around, checking if anyone was listening. The falling snow had emptied the streets, leaving them relatively alone. "What do you want from me?" Ray asked. "Nothing you don't want to give," Tom said, "but I'd like to buy you a cup of coffee, maybe talk about some options. The center has programs specifically for veterans. Housing assistance, medical help, counseling." "I don't need counseling," Ray cut in sharply. Tom nodded. "Fair enough. But a warm place to stay, medical care, those might be worth a conversation." Ray looked up at the gray sky, feeling the snowflakes landing on his face. Winter was here now, and it would be a hard one. "Just coffee?" Ray asked finally. "Just coffee," Tom confirmed. "At Lou's Diner around the corner." Best coffee in the neighborhood, and they don't mind if we sit there a while. Ray hesitated, then gave a small nod. I need to check on Ms. Rose first. Make sure her cart is secured before this snow gets worse. Tom smiled. I've got time. And the coffee will still be hot when we get there. As they walked through the falling snow, they kept a careful distance from each other. Two men who understood the value of personal space, two soldiers from different wars but similar battles. Neither knew if anything would come from this coffee, this conversation, but for the first time in years, Ray felt a small opening, a tiny crack in the wall he had built around himself. Lou's diner was warm and smelled of coffee and fried potatoes. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, didn't look twice at Ray's worn clothes or untrimmed beard as she led them to a booth in the corner. Tom ordered coffee for both of them and some apple pie. You don't have to feed me, Ray said, his voice low. I know, Tom replied, but that pie is too good not to share. The coffee came in thick white mugs, steaming hot. Ray wrapped his hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep into his fingers. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been in a real restaurant, sitting at a real table. Little things that most people took for granted now felt strange to him. They sat in silence for a while, just drinking coffee. Tom didn't push, didn't ask questions. He seemed to understand that Ray needed time. How'd you know I was Force Recon? Ray finally asked. Not many civilians can spot the difference. Tom smiled slightly. I work with veterans every day. You learn to recognize the signs. Different branches, different units, they all leave their mark in different ways. The pie arrived, 2 generous slices topped with melting ice cream. Ray stared at it for a moment before picking up his fork. When did you serve? Tom asked. Ray took a bite of pie before answering. Joined at 19. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. He paused. Got out 8 years ago. Distinguished service? Tom asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Ray's eyes flickered up briefly. How would you know that? Just a guess, Tom said. The way you handled those gang kids. Professional. Controlled. Like I said, you could have hurt them badly, but you didn't. Ray looked down at his coffee. I did what needed doing, nothing more. That's what makes a good Marine, Tom said. Doing what needs doing, nothing more, nothing less. For a moment, something almost like pride crossed Ray's weathered face. Then it was gone, replaced by the careful blankness he usually wore. What happened when you came back? Tom asked gently. Ray's fork scraped against the plate as he gathered the last bite of pie. He chewed slowly, as if buying time, deciding how much to share. The usual story, he finally said. Couldn't sleep, couldn't be in crowds, jumped at loud noises. Wife tried to help, but he trailed off, shaking his head. Some things you can't explain to people who weren't there. PTSD, Tom said. It wasn't a question. That's what the VA called it, Ray nodded. Gave me pills, sent me to groups. Nothing helped much. And your wife? A shadow passed over Ray's face. She stuck it out for 3 years. Can't blame her for leaving. Living with me was like living with a ghost. His voice grew quieter. I'd zone out for hours, wake up screaming. Couldn't hold down a job. Outside, the snow was falling harder now, sticking to the diner windows in lacy patterns. How long have you been on the streets? Tom asked. Almost 4 years, Ray answered. Lost the apartment first, then the car. Slept in shelters for a while, but, he gestured vaguely. Too many people. Too much noise. Couldn't handle it. Tom nodded, understanding. Many veterans struggled with the crowded, often chaotic environment of homeless shelters. So you went it alone, Tom said. Easier that way, Ray replied. Out here, I only have to worry about myself. Tom leaned forward slightly. Except that's not what you're doing. You're looking out for Ms. Rose. You're helping those kids with their shelter. You're still serving Ray. Still protecting people, just without the uniform. Ray looked startled, as if this thought had never occurred to him. It's just... Ray hesitated, searching for the right words. It's the right thing to do. Yes, Tom agreed. It is. And you're still the kind of man who does the right thing, even when everything else has been stripped away. The waitress came by with more coffee. As she refilled their cups, she smiled at Ray. You boys need anything else? We're good, thanks, Tom replied. After she left, Ray stared into his coffee cup. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. "That depends on you," Tom said. "The Veterans Center has a transitional housing program. Small rooms, but private. No crowds. Medical care through the VA. Help getting benefits sorted out. And the catch? You have to want it," Tom said simply. "You have to be willing to try." Ray's hands tightened around his mug. "Last time I tried, it didn't work out so well." "This time would be different," Tom said. "This time, you'd be working with people who understand what you've been through. Other veterans. People who speak the same language." Outside, a police siren wailed in the distance. Ray tensed automatically, his eyes darting to the door, mapping escape routes. Old habits. Tom noticed but didn't comment. He just waited patiently until Ray's focus returned to the conversation. "Winter's coming," Tom said quietly. "It'll be a hard one. You know that better than most." Ray nodded, thinking of his cardboard shelter, his thin blanket. Thinking of Ms. Rose and her shopping cart with the wobbly wheel. "I can't make any promises," Ray said finally. "I'm not asking for promises," Tom replied. "Just a chance." A week passed after Ray's coffee with Tom. The winter had settled in firmly now, with temperatures dropping below freezing every night. Ray had visited the Veterans Center twice, once to take a hot shower and get a warm meal, and once to talk with a doctor about his old knee injury that had been bothering him more in the cold weather. He was still sleeping under the overpass, still not ready to commit to the program Tom had offered. But something had changed in him. A tiny spark had been lit, a small possibility that there might be a different path forward. That spark was about to be tested. It was early evening when Ray noticed unusual movement near the homeless camp, where Ms. Rose and several others had set up their shelters. From his vantage point, he could see a group of young men approaching, the downtown boys, and this time there were more of them than ever. He counted 15, including Red Jacket at the front. Ray stood up, his decision already made. He couldn't sit by and watch them terrorize people who couldn't defend themselves. As he started walking toward the confrontation, his phone, an old flip phone Tom had given him just in case, felt heavy in his pocket. He flipped it open and dialed the only number saved in it. "Tom? It's Ray. Those gang kids are back. Big group. Heading toward Ms. Rose and the others." He listened for a moment, then added, "Yeah, I'm heading there now. Corner of Elm and 12th. By the time Ray reached the camp, the gang members had already surrounded the small group of homeless people. Ms. Rose stood clutching her cart, a teenage girl huddled behind her. Two older men stood with their backs to each other, looking terrified but determined to protect their few possessions. "Well, look who's here," Red Jacket called out when he spotted Ray approaching. The tough guy himself. Ray said nothing, just kept walking forward until he stood between the gang and the homeless group. "You didn't learn your lesson last time?" Red Jacket asked, his hand moving toward his pocket. "I learned plenty," Ray said calmly. "Question is, did you?" Some of the gang members shuffled their feet nervously, remembering how easily Ray had taken down their leader before. But with 15 of them now, they felt braver. "Last time was just you and me," Red Jacket said. "This time, it's different." "You're right about that," came a voice from behind them. The gang members turned to see Tom walking toward them. But he wasn't alone. 5 other men were with him, ranging in age from about 30 to 60. They didn't look particularly intimidating in their regular clothes, jeans, work boots, winter jackets, but there was something about the way they carried themselves, the steady look in their eyes, that made several gang members step back. "What is this?" Red Jacket demanded, his confidence wavering slightly. Ray moved to stand beside Tom and the others. "This isn't just about me anymore," he told Red Jacket calmly. "Each person here has fought for this country. Now we're fighting for this street." The 6 veterans formed a line between the gang and the homeless camp. None of them made threatening moves, but their presence alone created a wall of quiet strength. People walking by began to slow down, watching the standoff. Some pulled out their phones, sensing something was happening. A news van that happened to be in the area covering a local shop opening noticed the gathering crowd and pulled it over, a reporter and cameraman quickly getting out. "You brought friends," Red Jacket said, trying to sound tough despite the growing audience. "So what?" "These people have names," Ray said, his voice carrying clearly in the cold air. People had stopped to listen now, forming a loose circle around the confrontation. They have stories. They're human beings who deserve dignity and safety. And they have us now. The reporter had pushed forward, had cameramen filming. Red Jacket noticed the camera and faltered, looking around at the gathering crowd of witnesses. "You think a few old vets scare us?" he said, but his voice lacked conviction. One of the veterans with Tom, a gray-haired man with glasses and a quiet demeanor, stepped forward. "Son, we've faced a lot scarier things than you. But this isn't about fear. It's about community. About looking out for each other." Another veteran, a tall woman with short black hair, added, "This street belongs to everyone. Not just those who can pay your so-called protection money." The crowd had grown larger now. Someone from the coffee shop across the street had come out with cups of hot coffee for Ms. Rose and the other homeless folks. A couple of police officers had arrived, standing at the edge of the crowd, watching carefully. Red Jacket looked at his friends, then at the growing crowd of witnesses, the camera, the police. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. This was supposed to be a simple show of force, a way to establish dominance. "This isn't over," he said to Ray, trying to save face. "Not by a long shot." "Maybe not," Ray agreed calmly. "But for tonight it is." The game members began to back away, trying to look casual rather than defeated. The crowd parted to let them through, many faces showing disapproval. As they retreated, Ray heard Ms. Rose behind him, her voice small but clear. "Thank you for not forgetting about us." Ray turned to look at the small group of homeless people, then at Tom and the other veterans who had come to stand with him. For the first time in years, he felt part of something again, part of a unit, a community. "Nobody gets left behind," he said quietly. "That's the rule." The news clip about the standoff between the veterans and the downtown boys went viral overnight. People were touched by the image of former military members standing up to protect the homeless community. The reporter had captured Ray's words about dignity and safety, and those few sentences resonated with viewers across the city. By the next morning, the veterans' center phone was ringing nonstop. Donations poured in, warm clothes, blankets, food, and money. Local businesses called offering jobs. A nearby apartment building owner offered reduced rent for veterans transitioning off the streets. Tom watched all this with amazement, but his main concern was still Ray. The morning after the confrontation, he found him in his usual spot under the overpass, packing up his few belongings. "You heading somewhere?" Tom asked. Ray looked up, his face showing the exhaustion of a sleepless night. "Just moving spots. Those boys might come back looking for payback. Or," Tom said carefully, "you could consider that room at the center we talked about. At least for a few nights. Until things cool down." Ray paused, his hands still on his backpack. The past weeks had worn him down, the cold, the confrontations, the constant vigilance. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to consider the possibility of sleeping in a real bed behind a locked door. "Just for a few days," Ray said finally. "Then we'll see." That was 4 months ago. Now, on a bright spring morning, Ray stood at the front of a small classroom in the community center, facing 20 people, a mix of homeless veterans and community volunteers. His beard was neatly trimmed now, his clothes clean and simple. The haunted look in his eyes hadn't completely disappeared, but there was something else there too: purpose. First rule of street safety, Ray was saying, is awareness. You need to know what's happening around you at all times. The group listened attentively as Ray explained the security patrol system he had developed with Tom and the other veterans. They called themselves the Street Guardians, and their mission was simple: create safe zones throughout the city where homeless people could exist without fear of harassment. What had started as a small effort by 6 veterans had grown into an organized program with daily patrols, emergency response teams, and coordination with local police and social services. The downtown boys' influence had faded as the Guardians' presence became more established. After the class, Ray walked with Tom through the park where many homeless people still gathered. Several called out greetings as they passed. "How's Ms. Rose doing in her new place?" Ray asked. Tom smiled. "Loving it. She's already started a small garden on her windowsill. Says she's growing herbs to make proper tea." Ray nodded pleased. Getting Ms. Rose into senior housing had been one of their first successes. She still came to visit the center regularly, bringing cookies and sharing stories with the newer veterans in the program. "And the night patrol for the west side?" Ray asked. "All set for tonight. Jimmy and Pat are leading it." They stopped at a bench overlooking the river. Though Ray now had a room at the veterans' transitional housing, he still spent most of his days outdoors. Too many years on the streets had made walls feel confining sometimes. "You know," Tom said as they sat down, the mayor's office called again. "They want to talk about expanding the Guardian program citywide. Official funding, maybe even some paid positions." Ray looked skeptical. Politicians getting involved usually means paperwork and rules. "True," Tom agreed. "But it also means reaching more people, helping more veterans. And with you leading the training." "I'm not a leader," Ray said automatically. Tom raised an eyebrow. "Tell that to the 30 veterans who joined the program because of you. Or to the community members who volunteer because they heard you speak." Ray didn't answer, just looked out at the river, watching the water flow. His journey over the past months hadn't been easy. There were still nights when the nightmares came, still days when crowds and noise overwhelmed him. He attended therapy at the VA now, not because he was forced to, but because he had goals to meet, a program to build, people counting on him. "I got a letter from my daughter yesterday," Ray said quietly. "First contact in almost 5 years." Tom knew how significant this was. Ray had mentioned his estranged family only once before. She saw the news story. Someone shared it on social media. Ray's voice was steady, but his hands gripped the bench tightly. "She wants to meet for coffee next time she's in town." "That's good news," Tom said simply. Ray nodded, one step at a time. A light spring rain began to fall, but neither man moved to find shelter. After years on the streets, a little rain meant nothing. "I was lost out there for a long time," Ray said, watching the raindrops create circles in the river. "Thought I had no more battles worth fighting." "And now?" Tom asked. Ray thought about the new recruits waiting for training, the veterans still living on the streets who needed their help, the community they were building day by day. "Now I know better," he said. "Some battles are worth everything you've got." As they sat in comfortable silence, Ray realized something he hadn't felt in years. He was no longer just surviving. He was living again, with purpose and connection. The war inside him wasn't over, might never be completely over, but he was no longer fighting it alone. And for today, that was enough.